However, how do you, when you're referencing a particular value inside an array, how do you tell an array I want value from this place versus that place?
Oh, okay, sorry. What was that, Josh? Sorry.
So when you are grabbing a value out of an array, how do you tell the compiler I want value from here versus value from there within the same array?
Wouldn't you say array and then within the brackets use any number from 0 to the end of the last
array?
number of the array? Yeah.
Okay. Now, what is the maximum number that you can go to within an array? What is the maximum number you can go to within an array?
Is it 20?
Of size n, let's say, whatever the n is. N could be 20, n could be 400, n could be 1,000, n could be 1,000,000. It doesn't matter. Whatever the value of n is, you can go up till, so the last value that you will pull out in the square brackets, an array of size n means whatever number. Will it be that number in the square bracket that you will write? Let's say if you have an array of size 10, what number will you write for the last item in the square bracket?
9.
9. Okay, so what does that mean? The very first element, the very first value is location number 0. Okay. Did any one of you ever wondered why?
As far as I know, that's always been a computer programming convention.
No, because if you go to Visual Basic can start from 1 or 0. Well, for a long time, Visual Basic will start with 1, because Basic would start with 1. Then Visual Basic let you, first of all, decide wherever you want to have your beginning index number. And then Visual Basic in the later versions gave you a choice of starting at 0. Then Visual Basic in the even later versions defaulted to 0. So Visual Basic is a classical example that it doesn't always have to be 0. The only reason you see C# and Java start at 0 because they have the same parent, which is C++. And in C++, we start at 0. So the question comes in, why in the world does it have a 0 to be the very first block? Have you ever thought about that question? Did you ever ask that question?
I have wondered, but I've never asked.
Okay, let me explain to you what exactly is the reason behind doing that. Let me share my screen with all of you real quick here. Okay, so you can see my screen over here. And let me grab an array of 10 blocks, right? Like that. So we've got 0. Oops, hold on a second. We've got 0. And we have got 1. We have got 2. And like that all the way till 9. These are the 10 blocks. Now, let's say I call this array student IDs. And this is where the array is declared as a student ID. Where do you think the array is pointing at? Is the array pointing at the entire code block? Yes or no? Is the array pointing at the entire block?
No.
Okay, let's take a vote. For those of you who think yes, should give me a green check. The rest of you, I will assume is no. Out of 14 of you, 8 of you said that it is pointing at the entire block. That means the majority thinks that it is pointing at the entire block of all items. However, in reality, it is only pointing at the first block. It never points at the entire block. It only points at the very first block. So this assumption is false. Now, why does it start at 0 is still the question. Let me give you an example. If there are 2 chairs in a room and you are sitting on one of the 2 chairs, and if you have to go to the other chair, how many chairs have you jumped?
1.
1. But there are a total of 2 chairs, right?
Yeah.
You don't count the one that you're sitting on.
No, because yeah, the act of jumping is only 1.
Exactly. So that's why it is 0, because that's where the array is sitting. You only tell the jumps. When you say, I want to go to the array index 9, you basically are saying, I want you to jump 9 blocks from your current place. So that will be the start of the 10th block. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, because each block is fixed in size by the data type. So it knows exactly how many blocks to jump. So all it needs is an index number which tells how many blocks to jump. And that'll be the starting point of that block. That's why it starts at 0, because the array is pointing at the very first block only. Okay. So an array can be initialized and an array can be declared without initialization. Can anybody tell me the difference between the two? Array can be declared and array can be declared with initialization.
One, you're already putting data in, the other, you're just setting the space away for.
Yeah. So when I just declare an array, I'm asking for a space. And then when I say array is declared and initialized, then those spaces are filled with some initial values. Very good. Now, typically speaking in Java, data types are divided into how many types? The top level categories of data types in Java. How many? I'm looking for a
2.
number. What'd you say, Jessica?
2.
2, exactly. And what are they?
Primitive and non-primitive.
Primitive, yes, but the other one is not correct.
Sorry, I can't remember the other one.
Let's see if somebody else will remember. Let's refer to somebody else. By the way, I already gave you the answer for the second part. Let's see who can guess that. Can anybody repeat what I just said? After I told Jessica that she gave half the answer and we should now do what to somebody else?
What did somebody else answer?
refer to somebody else. And that will lead us to our answer of Francisco gave the answer in the chat. Reference types, right? Reference types are class-based and primitive types are non-class-based. Here lies a distinction in an array. If you declare an array of reference type, you are only telling the compiler that I need X number of objects. I need X number of objects. However, none of the objects are instantiated. I have not called the constructor on any of the objects. When you do not call the constructor on the object, what happens? The object is not initialized. And what does that mean? If the object is not initialized and is only declared, who can tell me what does that mean? This is chapter 3, chapter 4 question.
There hasn't been any values assigned to the variable.
We have a particular word for such an object, which is declared but has not been initialized. Very good, Mason. We call it a null, and there's another word. I need the second word. Null what? Look at my finger. What am I doing at you right now?
Sure. Pointing.
Okay. Pointer, null pointer. Okay. It's a null. Pointer means it is pointing at nowhere, no memory. It is just declared by name. It's not even, it has not allocated any memory. So that's why anytime you receive a null pointer error, it pretty much means that you have an object which is declared, but since it has not called the constructor, it is pointing at nowhere. So just always remember this little thing. Anytime you see a null pointer error, it means that you have an object that has not been initialized. That's about it. Okay, so an array of objects needs to first be declared. It's step number 1. And then step number 2 would be to initialize each one of the element, one element at a time. Now here comes a question that, okay, if I declare an array of reference types that is like 200, do I need to write 200 lines of code, linear code, to instantiate each object? No. Remember, in an array of size 200, the index numbers are 0 through 199, and they're all in a sequence. So you can always run a loop, a for loop, a while loop, a do while loop, some kind of a loop that will let you traverse through one element at a time and will let you instantiate it by calling constructor. We'll do all these things today, but I'm just giving you a little heads up here. On the contrary, if you have a primitive type, if you declare a primitive type array and you do not initialize it, it always gets initialized to the default of the data type. So for example, if I declare an array of type Boolean, what will be the values of all elements?
Boolean.
No. The value, not the type. Of course, the type is Boolean. What will be the initial value of all the elements when I do not initialize with any value?
0.
That's an integer.
False.
False. Okay, so in Java, the values for Boolean are true, false, not 0, 1. Behind the scene, they're 0, 1, but in the language, they're true, false. Okay, now similarly, if I declare a variable, an array of type character, and I do not initialize, what will be the value stored inside each element? An array of type character, declared but not initialized.
Blank?
Close, but not true.
A space.
No. Let's see. No, nobody knows. It's the same answer that Mason gave earlier on. What was Mason's answer in the chat?
No.
Null. Right. So null is the value, default value for a character in string when no other value is provided. Not null pointer, just null. Null pointer is specially used for objects. So if it's a string variable, if a string element, that'll be a null pointer. If it's a character variable or a character array element, it'll be null. Now, if you look at numbers of any kind, integer, short, long, byte, double, float, they all get initialized to 0 or 0.0, depending on if it's double float versus the other int types. So that square bracket number, what do you call that number that you write in the square brackets? Anybody? What do you call that number? What's the official term that you would use for that number that you write in the square brackets? And there are more than one answers for this question.
Index.
Index, very good. That's one correct answer. Anybody else has another answer for that? The answer is, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's on
okay.
chapter 8 arrays.
Yeah, the answer is right there.
Subscript.
Very good, subscript. Okay, so what is the plural for index? It's indices, or for subscript is subscripts. Okay, do you guys know what is a parallel array? What are parallel arrays? Probably would have learned it in Intro to Programming. Yes? Oh, there's a silence.
Is it when, I'm probably going to explain this wrong, so I'm sorry, but so like if you had a student ID number in one array and then you had the student name in another array, but they're linked that way, is that what they are?
Yep, exactly. So two or more arrays of equal length having corresponding values. So, and that would be a good example that you have an array of IDs, you have an array of scores. So the score in index 0 has its ID and score in the other array at the same location, and so on and so forth. Can one of the two parallel arrays be multidimensional? Or do they have to also match in dimensions?
It can be different.
Yep, they can be different. However, there has to be one thing that must match. One is the number of rows in a multidimensional array must match the number of elements in the single dimensional array. So this is how we look at it. For example, in a two-dimensional array of 5 rows, each row having 15 values, those are the 15 test scores. So the first row's test scores, all 15 of them are for the student that is found in the first slot of the single dimensional array. So I can grab the first slot of the IDs array, and then I can come to the first row of the two-dimensional array and start reading all the scores of that student. Is everybody following that? Okay, so that's how we can have parallel arrays also. Okay, and then you can also pass arrays as parameters. Arrays can pass parameters element by element, or you can pass an entire array as a parameter. Similarly, you can return an entire array back to the caller. You could also do that. Okay. Do you guys know the difference between pass by value and pass by reference?
Pass by value, you just pass the number inside the variable, and pass by reference, you actually pass the location for the variable.
Very good. So what happens when you do the pass by value versus pass by reference?
So the pass by reference will actually change the first variable, while pass by value, you just pass it back into usually into a variable.
Very good. So in pass by reference, when you pass a value from one variable to another, since in pass by reference, the variable that is passing, it passes its memory location to the receiver. So receiver and passer are pointing at the same memory location. So if a receiver changes the value in that location, it also changes for the passer. In pass by value, the receiver has its own memory and passer has its own memory. The value simply gets copied from a passer into the receiver's memory. So if receiver makes any changes to that value, it only changes in the receiver's memory, where passer preserve its old value. When you're passing an array element by element, you need a variable on the other end to receive it element by element, because variables cannot hold multiple values at the same time. So that will be passed by value. But when you pass an array into an array, Java automatically makes the receiver array point to the memory block of the passer array. So in this particular situation, if student IDs was passed as a parameter to another method, where let's say we had another array called SID, the SID, instead of having another memory block, it will actually start pointing at the memory block of student IDs. So they will basically be pointing at the same block. So any changes made by SID will reflect student IDs. So this only happens, pass by reference only happens when you pass an array into an array. You can't control it. You cannot change it to a reference, from reference to a value. If you want the arrays to be treated pass by value, then pass an element, one element at a time. Otherwise, it will always be passed by reference if you pass an array into an array. Okay. Any questions so far, guys?
I'm good.
Okay, let's move to chapter 9 then. We done with chapter 8? I'm just kidding. Come. Okay, so I already told you guys that an array can be declared in Java exactly the same way as C#, but with some minor differences. What we're gonna explore as we start moving through the chapter. So this one, that is an array declaration of type double. and name of the array is sales figure. What is missing in this block and that block? What is missing?
The index.
The size. We have not written the size of the array. So as a result, they are both declaration, but no memory is assigned to them. The memory only gets assigned to them when you complete the right-hand side. So the left-hand side pretty much says, I need a double array called sales figure. The right-hand side says, I need 20 blocks like that. However, the question is, do I have to do it in the same line? No, you can actually do it this way as well. So if you think you should not be holding on to memory unnecessarily, then you declare an array, and later on in the code, wherever you need to allocate, you can simply then allocate. And by default, all the blocks will be initialized to 0.0 because the data type is double. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, this is how you can individually assign a value to a location in an array. Array name, square brackets, you write the number, the index number, and the value gets placed in that index number. Exactly the same way you will display it, and it'll display the value located in that index number. You could use a number, you could use a constant, you could use a variable, or you could use a calculation. Any of the many ways can be used to instantiate an array or declare an array size, I should rather say. Okay. Also, there is another fifth approach is you can call a method. The method will return a value. That value can also be used to figure out the size of the array. Okay. Here is an example where we declare an array called double. We create an array called salaries of type double, and the size of this array is 4. That means index number 0, 1, 2, 3. So we are initializing all 4 with values, and then we are displaying all 4 values one at a time. However, this is not the best approach. However, one of the many approaches. So what I would like you guys to do is open Eclipse. Okay, go to page number 370 in your books and do this you do it activity. What is the name of this class?
Demo array.
Demo array. Yep. So create a class called demo array. Do all 6 steps, run the program. When you can see the output, give me the green check. So once I get green checks from all of you, we will then move on. And I'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Okay, guys, I'm back. So anyway, so far, 6 of you are done. Okay. Okay, so except for Cole and Christian, everybody else is done? Cole, Christian, and Mason. You guys have any questions, or are you still coding? Oh,
Still coding.
still coding, okay. Okay, so everybody's done. Does anybody has any questions about? Oh, Christian is still working on it. Okay, I didn't see that. Okay. Christian, is everything okay? It's probably just
Yeah, I just got it.
oh, okay. Okay. So does anybody has any question about this stuff that you declare an array of certain size, you assign values to it, and then you simply display it back. And this is a linear approach, not the best approach for arrays. So we're going to be looking at better approaches moving forward. So right now, I am moving to page number 376, where you can see the difference between when you simply declare an array with a data type and not write the right-hand side. So it's pretty much like declaring a null array where no memory is yet allocated. And these two statements mean exactly the same thing. On the contrary, this statement means that you have not only declared an array of size, you've not only declared an array, but you've also given it a size. So it gets initialized with the default values for that data type. Now you can start assigning values. One of the other things that you can do with an array is you can declare an array and right away you can give it values. This is called initializing an array in declaration. So when you do that, you don't need to mention the size of the array. Depending on the number of values you give, that will be the size of the array. So what will be the size of mults of 10?
6.
6. Okay. What will be the index numbers?
0 through 5.
0 through 5. Very good. Okay. So this is where you can declare an array, salaries, assign it the values at the time of declaration, and then you can simply display the values. Okay. So what I would like you to do now is go follow the you do it number 2 steps. It is asking you to open demo array.java, which you just created, save it as demo array2.java, and then change the name of the class to demo array2, and then just simply follow through the 3 steps. And again, give me a green check when you guys are done with demo array2. So you should see exactly the same output whenever you guys are done. The output of demo array 2 will be the same as the output of demo array 1, which is figure 8-2. We just changed the way how the array is initializing itself versus hard coding the values. Okay, we still have 1, 2 people, 3 people more to go. Okay. Okay, so I think Mason and Christian are the only 2 people still working on it. Okay. I believe Mason is the only one left. Mason, is everything okay? You need any help? Okay, sure. Let me know when you're done.
I'm all set.
Okay, cool. Okay, guys, so this is what we have seen already on the previous example, that you can declare an array and you can assign it values. Also, it is possible for you to increase elements of arrays, their values, through a constant. And in this case, we are incrementing all the values by the value of 3. So this becomes 5, then 17, this becomes 38, this becomes 70 and 88. Also, instead of displaying them one item at a time, it is also possible for you, or increasing the values linear, it is also possible for you to run a loop that goes through the array. In our case, we are going from 0 to less than 5. Why are we going less than 5? Because the last index is 4. So either you can type less than equals to 4, or you can type less than 5. Either of the two is fine. And then when you are traversing through the array, one element at a time, you grab the array And based on the value of sub, it will go to that particular location in the array, and that's where it'll increment it by the value. Is everybody following this example? This top box versus the bottom box as to how they're equal?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, moving on to this example, what is the author trying to tell you? The author is trying to tell you, even if the array size 100, there isn't any difference between the two pieces of code. So this approach will give you more flexibility in terms of doesn't matter how big the array is. So here is another piece of code where we have an array called score, and these are the values. The number of scores is 5. And then instead of saying, I want to go from 0 to 5, we can also use a constant. I want to go from 0 to less than whatever is the value of that constant. That approach can also be done. However, there's even a better approach that can be done. And that is every array has a built-in property called length, which will be the same as the largest index plus 1. So it's going to be 0 to 1 less than the largest index. So length will always be the total number of items. So an array of size 5, the length will be 5, but the index numbers will be 0 through 4. So that's another approach that can be taken in that regard. Okay. Then comes an enhanced for loop. Enhanced for loop is the for loop that where you don't have to worry about the starting index and the ending index. Rather, what the for each loop does, it automatically grabs one value out of an array into a variable whose data type is the same as the array type, and it will keep doing it till the array runs out of values. So instead of saying go from 0 to less than 5, incrementing by 1, go element by element, you can use a for enhanced for loop, which will grab one value at a time out of the array into a variable called val and display it. Go back, fetch the next value, and display it. It'll keep doing it till the array runs out of values. This is called the enhanced for loop. Some languages call it for each loop. You probably would have also seen a variant of this one in C#. Okay. Now let's have a look at this code here. This is a class called average of quizzes. The program starts with a score set to the size 10. We have some variables that will be used in the program. We start accepting the very first quiz score from the user. If the value of score is not equals to quiz, so what's the quitting value is 999. If the value is not equals to the quit, then go ahead, grab the score, put it into the array. Then who can explain me what's going on right here? What do you call that? In programming terminologies, there is a term for that. It also happens in a cash register. You know, when you go to a cash register, every item that you ring, what happens? It gets added to the subtotal, right? So what do you call that? Nobody knows?
No.
Let's see if somebody writes it in the comment section. Oh, somebody wrote the answer in the comment section.
Is it the running total? Oh
Yay!
man, how do I know?
Hey,
Running total. So anytime you're asked to calculate the running total, it could be coming from an array, it could be coming from a database, it could be coming from a file, it could be coming in from any place. It is called a running total because it is ticking till you run out of values. Okay. Jogging total. No, they don't call it jogging total, right? You know, you remind me of a joke. I don't know if I told you guys this or not, but there was this guy who completed a math homeworks on logarithms. You guys know what logarithms are, where you calculate the logs. So he gave it to his friend so that he can copy his homework. The next day, he told his friend, I hope you didn't copy it exactly what I gave you. You must have made some changes so the teacher can't catch us cheating. He said, don't worry. I replaced all occurrences of logs with, what do you think what he did? That's what he did. So yeah, replace them with trucks.
Uh,
So anyway, see, that's why we can't call it jogging total, Mason. So here we go, and we start calculating the running total. And he's incrementing by 1 so that in the next cycle, we can put the next value in the next array element. And if the count reaches max, that means otherwise, if we keep going, we will run out of the elements in the array. It's going to be in the array index out of bounds. So to avoid that, we will make sure that we are not hitting the max. As soon as we hit the max, we want to quit. That's why we are changing the value of score to quit. And if you have not reached the max yet, we will accept the next value. And I'm going to keep doing it till either the user enters 999 or you hit the last element. And then you say the scores entered were, and then you display all the scores. And then why are we not using scores.length? Why are we going up to count? Why are we going 1 less than count? Can anybody answer that question? Why are we not using scores.length? And why are we going by the count in the bottom loop?
Is it because count is being used as the length, essentially, like up in the running total, it's put in there as the length?
The main reason is because there is no guarantee as to when the user quit.
Oh, okay.
If you go by the length, that means you want to run the length of the entire array, and user might have quit after the third value. So you're saving yourself from having to go through those extra empty blocks by controlling by count, because count is keeping track of how many elements the user actually entered. So that's why we're doing that. We're only displaying those scores. And if the count is not equals to 0, only then we want to display the average. If the count is 0, then we will simply say no scores were entered. Okay, so here is a sample run. Here are sample runs, I should say. So the user entered 60, 70, and then 999. So 60 and 70 were only included. Why? And why 999 was not included? Because the 999 is a quit value. So after we accept an input from the user, we go, if let's say the user entered 999, the score is 999. So you go back into the loop. Since the score is now equals to quit, that's why you will not be adding it to the running total. You'll just quit the loop and directly go to this line. The scores entered were. So that's why when the user enters 999, the next cycle is a quit cycle. And here, so it's 60 plus 70 is 130, divided by 2 is 65.0. Then we let the user enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 values. So the loop actually terminates as the max at the max value. And that's where we get to see the average of 81.3. Anyway, how about you guys now do this example? This is the name of the class, average of quizzes, and code this example and run this example. This is on page 381, figure 8-4. So almost all of you are done except for a couple people, Christian and Josh. For those of you who are done, do you have any questions? In the meanwhile, the others can catch up. Okay. So did you also tested the code besides coding it? That's important that you test the code as well. Yeah. If you haven't done so, then go ahead and please test the code as well to make sure that it takes the values from you and it quits on 999 and then it computes the average for you. And for those of you who are done with this example that we were working with, go to you do it activity at the bottom of page 381 and then complete these two steps. Page 381, you do it activity. So we have Francisco, Jack, and Robert are still working on it. Okay. Okay. Now, before I move on to declaring and using array of objects, let's put together a few examples. Oh, open the wrong Eclipse. Let me open the right Eclipse. Where'd that go? Okay. Let me close all this. File, new Java project. Chapters 8 and 9. Let's talk about a few concepts, some Java concepts. So we're going to call this one demo array. You guys have up to demo array 3, right? We're going to start a brand new sequence so that, you know, when you practice the others from the chapter, there is no conflict. So I'm calling mine demo array A, the very first one with the public static void main. If I want to declare an array of type double, I could do something like this, correct? Okay. Now, if I do something like this, do I now have 2 arrays or only the scores 1 is an array?
You have 2?
I have 2 arrays. So 2 arrays of type double. Now, do you know that in Java, you can also do this, and this is also declares an array called scores3. So you could write the square bracket with the data type, or you can write it with the array name. In both cases, so far it is acting exactly the same way. Now on line number 7, what is the difference between scores4 and score?
One is an array and one is just a double.
Very good. So scores4 is an array and score is a variable. So that is the difference between using the square brackets with the data type versus using it with the name. If that name is the only item on that line, then it doesn't really matter. But if that name has other names on that same line, then using square brackets with the name will make only that name an array, and rest of them will be the variables. Okay, so to practice, let's have a look at this. So double IDs equals to 1, 45, 67, and double IDs 2, let's call it IDs 1. Okay, IDs 2 equals to 44, 66, 78, 85. So in both cases, we have 2 arrays of type double. For integer, oh sorry, I should say double D IDS 1. It just gives me the first array, then gives a blank line, which is line 15, and then gives me the second array. Does anyone has any questions so far? So far, so good? Okay. Now we notice over here that we are repeating ourselves. We have a loop that is traversing through an array, and then we have another loop that is traversing through a different array. This is a good candidate for modularization. So what we can do is we can create a method and we can pass an array to the method, and we will let the method take care of all the display logic. So to make this happen, what we will do over here is that we will, for example, save it as demo array B. And let's create a method here. Public static void display. This method will receive a double array. We're going to call this one IDs. And I will simply copy and paste the code here that all this array will do after it receives an ID array, it will just simply display the output. And once it's done displaying the output, it will have a blank line, just like that. Okay. Blank line between arrays. And the top portion of the code, I can simply replace it with a call to display. First, I can pass IDS, then I can pass IDS2. Sorry, IDS1, IDS1, and then I can pass IDS2. Run it, and you'll see the exact same output as before, but the only difference is that we have now modularized the code. Everybody got this? Public static void change. I'm creating another array called, another method called change. What I want to do with that, I want to change the values of the array elements to other values inside the body of this method. Then we will check back to see that if changing the values here will also change the values in the main for the array. This will show us the pass by value, the pass by reference difference that we talked about earlier. So here I will run an array for integer I equals to 0. I should be less than IDS dot length and I plus plus. IDS will be whatever is the current value of IDS times 1.44. That'll be the new value for IDS. That's all I'm doing here in the change method, in the change method. So let's make a call to change method. And we'll call pass IDS 1. Then we'll pass IDS 2. And then we'll call the display methods again. And to make the output a little bit better, I will just comma separate. And here you can see the values were 1, 45, 67, 44, 66, 78, 85. And now the values are, you can see over here what they are. So changing them, because it was passed by reference, changing them in one did changes the other. So some of you may still be working, like Christian, Jack, Mason. Everybody's done except for Christian. Christian's still working on this.
Yeah, I'm still working on it.
Okay.
I do have a screenshot of it though, so.
So for those of you who are done, do you have any question about this? If I put anything in the chat, when you go into a breakout room, is that chat still available to you or no?
It is.
It is. Okay. Okay. Basically, what I'm thinking of doing next is I will be giving you an activity to do in a group. Let me first put the activity in the chat. Read through this activity, then I'll tell you the details. So what I asked you guys to do was to, first of all, write a program to accept scores from user, and the scores have to be within a range. So let me start out by creating a class called demo array C with a public static void main. I didn't put any cap as to how many I want. Okay, so I could actually declare something like this. I can modularize this code as well, where I'm accepting the value from user. So I could actually create a method called, for example, input ARR, where I can accept the entire array. Remember, we can accept a value in an array. And when we pass an array into an array, it's passed by reference. So I can call input array method, and I can pass the scores. Scores goes into ARR. Whatever values ARR has, exactly the same values scores will have. And I can use the scanner object for that. And I can tell the user that I'm interested. You can go ahead and insert values here. So please enter so many values. So this is my logic to accept an input. However, my input has to be within the range of 0 through 100. So I will use right here a nested loop where I have to make sure whatever input is coming in has to be within the range. So the value for the ARR, if it is less than 0, or if the value for ARR is over 100, then keep asking for the input over and over again. And if it follows within the range, only then you can go ahead with so here's my input logic. So this logic will let me accept X number of values for the scores. I'm just testing this for now. So if I enter a value, let's say -6, notice it forces me to re-enter the value for number 1, or 156. It will not let me go until and unless I give it a valid value. So that's basically the first part of the code was. You could have done it right within the main. I just modularized the code. That's about it. So that takes care of the first part of the code. Then I ask you to create a method called display, which will display each and every score along with, yeah, so it will display the score. That's it. Okay, so public static void display. And we will pass an array called scores. Okay, just so that you guys can also see this, let me pass the parameter like this so that you can see that it doesn't really matter if the square brackets is with the data type or the square brackets is with the name of the array. Either way, it acts exactly the same way. And this time, let's say if I use the for enhanced for loop, and I can say, well, score, and then I can display the score just like that. So right now, if I run this 66, 56, 66, 56, 56, 99, okay, and I need to call the display method. And pass it the scores. Oh, not here, sorry. It has to be from in the main. And here it displays all the scores back. Did everybody get this part? Oh, not quite. Okay. So even if you were not able to get this going with your group, do you understand what I'm doing so far?
I'm understanding this.
So again,
I know, like, I'm understanding this. And a lot
okay.
of times with like the homework and stuff we have to do projects, it takes me a minute to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I get to look at the examples and try to understand them a bit better and then go back through.
So I then ask you to create another method called letter, which will receive a single score and will return a letter grade. So A through F, something like that. And this letter grade will then be displayed alongside each score. So as I'm displaying score over here, next to it, I could then say grade, and I can right away call the letter, and I can pass the score and expect a grade back. So on every line, on each line, I can see the score alongside the score, I could see the grade. Now, this is where I can write an if condition where I can, this is something that I think we did in the past. So I'm just bringing something similar that we did before, like this guy here. You could see that it simply grabs the score and whatever range it falls under, it returns that letter grade back. That's all it does. So if I enter like scores, see, with every score, it displays a letter grade. with all of this is in with all this in place, only one piece is left, which is the very last piece. That is where I asked you create a method called calculations. And to which I said, pass the entire array, and we got to figure out the average. And we got to figure out the average letter grade. So we need to have the sum, and then we can calculate the average. This is very similar to the example that you guys did earlier on to calculate the running total. This is where you have your running total, or as one of you said, jogging total. Okay. And then you can calculate the average by simply dividing the sum by the length of the score. And I can call the calculations from the body of the display method. So let me test this real quick and show you guys the output. So these are the scores. These are the letter grades for each score. This is the average score, and this is the average grade. So that's what you guys were asked to do. Okay, give me a green check when everybody has this working. And for the group that already had their first set of solution, to them it's something they already had. So I don't know if, did this make sense to you guys? Now that we have the completed code? And, or anybody has any questions?
Now that it's completed, I'm understanding the logic, and we were super close. I think we were just making it more difficult on ourselves than it needed to be. But yeah, no, it makes sense.
Okay. I think we still have who? Christian, Jack, Jacob, Josh, Mason, and Sparrow. I think at least 5, 6 of you are still coding it. Okay. Christian is the only one still coding. Everybody else is done.
I'm just having an issue with my calculations.
Like, is it giving you an error, like a syntax error or runtime error or what?
So for my, I kind of dissected average of quizzes and then reused it. So
Oh, so you had a different logic that you're working with.
yeah, and I'm getting rid of the old and then putting in the new. It's a whole thing. So I'm almost done though.
Okay, okay.
All right, I've got it.
Okay. Now I am pushing in another item in the chats. And for this one, I will give you guys 12 minutes. And this one will be done in the group of 2 people. You create the class and then you come back. Everybody has to create a class because then I will use this code to move to the next step. So 3 of you have not joined your groups yet. So everybody get to, okay, we still have a few more people coming. So we'll just give them another 16 seconds to join back. So, everybody got this probably, I hope, this piece done, right? So we created, you guys should have created 3 properties, a couple of constructors, the default constructor calling the other constructor with some initial values, and then a getter and setter for each one of the property. So I told you that when you come back, we will be starting with the main. So as we are starting with the main, we now want to create an array of objects as opposed to creating individual objects. That will be our
Real quick.
focal point.
Have you been talking? I just got back and you were in the middle of like going over this.
Say it again.
I just got back and like people had green checks and you were in the middle of going over this.
Oh, I was just telling everybody that I expect everybody should have done this, what I asked, or is there anybody who didn't get to do this?
Okay.
Did you complete this or no?
I can't see everything you have, but I think I have what I need.
You don't need to have exact same values for, just in case, if anybody's wondering and trying to type the exact same values for the default, is just a methodology that should be there. The 3 properties, the getter and the setter for each property, 2 constructors, a default with a this call to the overloaded, and the overloaded assigning the values to the properties.
I don't
So,
have the overloaded.
oh, you don't
Or
have
the,
the, okay, okay. So the main focus for today will be, once you have the class created, is to create an array of objects. Instead of creating individual objects, where we will create game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4, we want to create an array of objects. And as I told you earlier today, that when you create an array of objects, it doesn't really get instantiated right away. So it's a 2-step process. Step number 1 is you create an array. And then step number 2 is that you instantiate an array element by element, because when you create an array, it doesn't really call the constructor. It only tells that I need X number of null pointers. That's all you're telling. Then you got to take each one of those null pointers and assign them to a constructor. And that's basically the way to go. Okay. So can I scroll down now?
Yes.
Okay. Jordan, you got caught up?
You have an error I'm trying to work out, but I have everything the same as you, so I'll figure it out as we go on.
What do you have? Where do you have the error?
In public games, this 101
You got
on
to,
line 9.
yeah, you got to match your parameters. See, I have an integer, string, and a double, so I have the same sequence.
Might be a dumb question, but do your setters use this?
Yeah,
This stuff. Oh, okay.
yeah, you're just, yeah, I had all my getters written first and then I wrote all my setters.
Okay, and possibly another dumb question. What's the advantage of using this in the setters?
What is the advantage of using this? Well, the question comes back to you. Why do we even use this?
When the variable names are the same.
Exactly. When the variable name is exactly the same as the name of the property, that's the place where you use the word this. So this is a differentiator between this is the property versus this is a parameter. So that saves developer from having to create too many variable names, different from the property names. Rather, we keep the same names. We just distinguish the properties by the this keyword, which refers to that these are the object properties, and the other ones are the parameters. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and if I could just get like a little itty bitty peek at one of the sets for just a second.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to see what the variable being passed in there was, so I figured it was that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Jordan, your problem resolved?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we're down to the main method. So as I told you, it's a two-step process. And step number one, you create an array. And let's say if I want to create an array to store 4 games, that's basically what I did. So in step number one, all I'm doing is I am declaring 4 null pointers of type games. And in step number 2, I got to instantiate each null pointer, each, I should say, object, or each element of array games. The easiest way would be to write a for loop that will traverse through the entire array, instantiating one object at a time. It's totally up to you if you want to call the default constructor or you want to call the overloaded one. I'm calling the default one for this instantiation process. Okay. Now, over here, let's learn about parallel arrays. And I already told you guys, and in fact, we had the discussion earlier that parallel arrays are those arrays where you have multiple arrays of same length with corresponding values. So we will be using parallel arrays in our next method, where we will use parallel arrays to call the setters on every object so that we can change its default value with that value that's coming from the parallel arrays. So we will create a method called public static void populate, and we will pass the games array, just like that. So line number 53 makes a call to line 58 and passes the entire games array into entire games array. Any changes made to the array on line 58 will automatically make changes to the array on line 53. So I have an error, a parallel array, 4 values. Why do I have 4 values? Because I have 4 games. I will be assigning the first ID to the first game, the second ID to the second game, and so on and so forth. Similarly, very similarly to that, I am declaring a parallel array for the game titles and another parallel array for the pricing. So just to show you guys the parallel arrays, each of the array is of the same size. And as each of the array is of the same size, that makes them parallel arrays. And then I will be using loops here, a loop here, which will go the length of any of the parallel arrays because they're all of the same size. And I will then call the respective setters for each object. I'll have set game ID dot set game price. So I will give everybody some time to get caught up with this method. And let me know when you are caught up with the populate method.
So for some reason, it's giving me an error right after the string array for titles. It's saying that, what's it saying? Titles is supposed to be in quotation marks for some reason.
Okay, so if you, I mean, like you're talking about set game title, right?
No, up in the, right below int array IDS, so then you list all the, right below
Oh,
popular games. Yep.
Oh, right here.
Mhm.
Do you have the line above syntax done correctly?
I believe so.
Let me have a look at your screen. That'll be faster than me having to, figure out without looking at what it is. So, okay. Oh, you forgot the equals after titles.
Oh, yep, I did. Silly me. All right, thanks.
Have you played Elden Ring yet?
No, I have not. Have you?
No, but I'm it's the next game I'm thinking about buying.
Yeah, I mean, I have a list of games that I'm keeping aside for summer.
At least you get a summer. I'm part-time, so I don't even get a summer.
The little bit I've played of Elden Ring is a lot of fun.
Cool. You know, summer is is a lesser load for me. Let me put it this way, because I don't have to do the chair duties. And I have lesser classes to teach, so we'll see. How
I'm
it
getting
goes.
errors
So again,
on, I'm getting errors on the line 65 and 66 for the set game price and title.
oh, okay, let's have a look at it.
Um,
Can you share your screen, please?
Give me 1 minute. to do that.
Okay,
I got it. I'm gonna join on my desktop.
okay. So you finally caught up with my typing, Jordan?
Actually,
I type slow.
Type slow.
Yeah.
No, that is not true. It's so fast. Oh, sorry. I think you hear me twice. Okay. That screen.
Okay, let's have a look at it. Okay. Can you hover over a set game title? Okay.
Title and prices
Yeah,
are
exactly. Exactly. You basically are passing prices to the title setter, and you're passing titles
Oh.
to the price setter. No. Yeah. You can just switch them around on line 51, make
Oh, I
that
see.
titles, and the other one make prices. Lowercase to p. Right. And then I think the method that you have is no. On line number 21. Can you scroll up? Let's scroll up all the way to the top. Okay. See if the game price is double, right? So on line 21, make that a double game price. Line 21. Yeah.
I
Okay.
originally had it at int before we came back from the breakout room.
Now scroll down. Oh, sorry. Scroll back. Sorry. Scroll up to line 14. Go to the end of line 14. Press enter. And close the curly brace from line 10. Here you go. Awesome. And now let's see where else you have. Oh, you still have an error on line. Yeah, because you still need to complete the rest of the code. So I will share once you stop sharing. Okay. So make sure that you have the correct number of closing curly braces. I think you only have 2 instead of 3 closing curly braces.
Yeah, mine are being weird for me today. I don't know why. Or I'm doing something different. But it keeps adding an extra one every time I go to do curly braces.
Okay. So make sure you guys call the populate method from the main, as I did on line number 53. And that will call populate, will pass games as a parameter into the games. And with the help of the parallel arrays, we will be able to load each one of the object with the 3 values by calling it setter. Then let's create another method, public static void, called display, to which again we will pass the games array. And this is the method in which we want to display the games. Do you guys remember the printf method we learned in the past?
This out control space.
No, but do you remember the printf method? versus println?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't. recall.
SYS out with control space.
No, I'm talking about in terms
Oh.
of working of the printf.
Oh,
Yeah, not the shortcuts. I'm not talking about shortcuts here. Okay, so printf method allow you to display column outputs. System out.println allows you to display items in the line, and the next line could be wavy, could go more than or less than the line above. So printf allows you to have column outputs. So for example, I can have system.out.printf, and I can say, well, you know what? I want to have 3 columns because I have 3 values in each object. I want to have a column of IDs, which I want size 6 is the column width. And the data type is string because it's a heading. My next heading I want to be size 20. And my third heading I want to be of the size 10. So you can actually block the whole space. And then you can say, well, new line, because printf doesn't have a built-in new line. So it doesn't automatically creates a new line on every printf. And now you can start giving the 3 column headings. So I can say, I want the first one to be IDs. I want the second one to be titles. And I want the next one to be prices. So like that, what it does during runtime, it replaces the first %6s with IDs. It replaces the second %20s with titles, and replaces the third one with prices, and the IDs will occupy 6 column space, titles will occupy 20 spaces, and prices will occupy 10. So, well, prices is only 6, and titles is also only 6, and IDs is only 3. So it just leaves the remaining 3 or whatever number of spaces are left, so that every line will be exactly the same way. It will fill in whatever can be filled, and the rest will be left empty. That way you can have nice columns. You guys never saw this in C# intro to programming?
if we did, we didn't talk about it for very long.
Yeah, because I don't recall ever doing it in C# in intro to programming.
Okay, okay. Anyway, and we didn't talk about it in this class before either?
I vaguely remember talking about columns and stuff, but I think
Okay.
it was only once.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway, doesn't really matter. So now what we will do is we will write a loop, and in that loop, we want to run through the length of the games array. Why we want to run the length of the games array? Because we want to display all the objects. So that's why we want to run the length of the games array. Every time I am in a loop, I want to display 3 values of each object. How do I get the values out of an object? Which method do we use, setter or getter? Get, exactly. Okay. Now, when I write my next printf, I have to be very careful. Why do I have to be careful? Because now I don't have the 3 strings. My very first getter is ID. What kind of value does the get ID returns? What is the return type of get ID?
Integer.
And
Integer, right? So I cannot use S. I have to use D. Okay. What is the return type for title? That's a string, so we're going to leave it as S. What is the return type for the price? That's double, right? So we're going to leave it as F for float. But one of the other cool things that you can do here is if you want your pricing to be up to 2 decimal places, you can actually write 10.2F. So when the price comes in, it will automatically be rounded to 2 decimal places, or not rounded, truncated to 2 decimal places. And then you can start calling the games dot get game ID, comma, games, dot get title. Whenever you guys are done with this code in the main method where you made a call to populate, right after that, make a call to display and pass the games array to this. Okay. So when you run your program after that, let me give you a glimpse and I'll show you the code again. See how the output is coming out in the columns? So you have an IDs column, titles columns, prices column, and that's what exactly the printf do. Okay, so make sure you add line 54 after you complete the display method.
I'm getting another error for all the eyes in the arrays.
Oh,
The
make sure you have line number 74 written correctly and you didn't write ones in place of eyes.
they're all eyes for me.
Let's have a look at it then.
Oh,
Sure you-
wait. There it was. It was I put a semicolon at the end of it.
Okay, cool. You fixed
Didn't
it.
see
So
that.
yeah. So whenever you guys are done, make sure you add line 54, which is a call to the display method from the main, and you pass games as a parameter and run your program to make sure that you are getting the output. Yeah, that's what I thought, Cole. I did it. Probably it was like 2-3 weeks ago. So it's quite possible that you guys don't remember it.
So I'm getting a couple errors in the four, and then the last line of code we did, and then the populates also.
You are getting an error in the call to the populate. Is that what you said?
Yeah, populate's got an error under it.
Okay. Can you see that it matches like in the populate method, line 58, are you accepting an array of games type?
Maybe. Oh, that's not right. Games. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's what that's supposed to be.
Okay, how about if we have a look at your screen?
Lovely.
Okay, let's see.
Oh, where'd it go? There we go.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, no, I was just trying to find a screen share button.
Oh, okay. Okay.
This is game one.
You have a space after the word populate and a parentheses.
Oh,
Okay, now can you save the changes? Okay, now hover over the word populate. Oh, hold on a second. Can you go back to line 50? It's line 60. You wrote games one. as a-
yeah, that's what it's.
Oh, that's what you call your class. Oh, okay. Then scroll down back to your
Someone read
main.
it.
Then you
All
okay,
these one.
right. Hold on a second. Go back up to the main method. Okay, then no, to the main method. Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Line 48, that should be games one then. And also the other side of the equals. Right. Yeah, games one. And then on line 53. Okay. And also if we scroll down, on line number 74. Okay.
That's cool.
Save the changes. Let me make sure that you don't have any other errors left. You still have errors? Okay. Where do we have these errors? Can you, okay, here, okay. Oh, you're missing a closing parentheses at the end of line 80.
Oh.
And semicolon, yeah, okay. Save the changes. Okay, that's it, done.
Alrighty, gotta love it.
Okay. How about the rest of you? So give
I'm
me,
still working on my display.
oh, okay, that's fine. So for anybody who keeps, I'm like, who got this working, can give me a green check. So I know that you guys got it. So anybody who has this working, what I would like you to do is this. Down below here, I will give you the function definition and I will let you write the program logic for that function. So this is what I would like you to do. Search for the ID in the game IDs. If found, if game ID is found, then display the game title and price. And then you will make the search call from the main for testing, but write the program logic for this. For doing a search mechanism. So what I did was, what I did in my solution is that I set a flag to false. Then I ran the length of the games array. Since I received the ID to check alongside the entire list of games. So I ran a loop that go from the 0 to the length of the games array. Every time I run this loop, I grab one of the game IDs out of the games array, and I compare that with the ID that I received as the parameter. If the game ID matches the ID, then I display the title and the price of that game. I set my flag to true. This is just a Boolean variable flag. And then I break out of the loop because there's no point of going in the loop once I find the game that I'm looking for. Why do I even have a flag? The whole purpose of the flag is that when I terminate the loop and I leave the loop and come out of it, I check the value of flag. If the value of flag remains false, that's an indicator that the ID was not found. If the value of the flag turns to true, that means the ID was found. To test this, I called the search from the main. I passed the entire arrays. One of the ID is I know will not be found. That's why you can see in my output ID not found. And the other ID I wrote from the list, and I know this ID exists. So that's 3939. That is the Elden Ring, and that is $44.99. And that's exactly what I see as the price and the title. So that's how I test this. So that's my search mechanism, and that's my test mechanism. So I'm seeing that Greg and Oscar, you guys are the only two who got this, and others, I don't know how close you were to getting this.
pretty close, I think.
Okay, cool. That's good. You can then look at this week's homework assignment. And let me know if you have any questions about the homework assignment for this week. I know we didn't get a chance to go into chapter number 9. We will get to chapter 9 next time. But this week's homework assignment is just like we are building on top of what we had done in the prior weeks. It is still based on the same sales problem that I assigned you last time. But this time I'm asking you to change the objects to array of objects and display the full name of the salesperson object with the highest sales. Much easier than what the example that we did in class. However, a way for you to go back to the example that you're building and modify it.
I had a question on it,
Mhm.
but also Cole wanted you to scroll up to the main method.
Say again?
Cole asked if you could scroll up to the main method.
Oh, okay.
and then- But I had a question about the homework. I just wanted to let him see that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sure, go ahead.
I think your screen's frozen, or it is for me.
Oh, hold on a second. Okay, sure, go ahead.
When it's, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but when it says create array of objects of size 3,
Right.
is that like the other ones where it's like scores was as we did 10 scores?
No. You basically created in the last assignment, I believe you created 2 objects.
In sales?
Yeah, in the salesperson class, you created hold on a second. Assignment, hold on a second.
I gotta find where I put
Yeah,
that.
so well, basically it was moving. Okay, I gotta go to the 208 one. Okay. In the 208 one, I asked you to create 2 instances. Like the very first time you did this, like 3 weeks ago, I
Mhm.
asked you to create 2 separate instances.
The like
But-
salesperson amount 1 equals new salesperson.
I don't know what you call them. It's whatever you
Is that-
call whatever you
that-
call your objects. It could be salesperson 1, salesperson 2. That's not important. But what's important is that 3 weeks ago, your assignment number 4 is where I asked you to create 2 objects of salesperson type. Instantiate 2 salespersons is what I asked you to do in assignment 4. In assignment number 5, I ask you to write a code logic to figure out the last name and the first name of the salesperson with the highest sales. This week, I'm asking you that instead of having 2 separate salesperson instances, you will create an array of salespersons, and the size of the array will be 3. And then you will display the name of the highest sales out of the 3 salespeople.
So pretty much everything that would be in our main public
Everything,
static void main, we would get rid of.
no, everything else will carry over. The only thing is that you will modify your main. You'll not get rid of everything in the main. You'll modify your main to make it work with an array of sales objects. So you'll modify.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jordan?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So you guys' main emphasis for this week would be to write a code logic. Your code logic could entirely be written in the main. You can modularize your code logic however you want to do it. It's your deal. But the whole idea is the end result should be that when I run that program, I should be able to see the full name of the salesperson with the highest sales. That's all we are aiming for out of the 3 salespeople.
It's still gonna ask you to enter the sales amounts and everything like it has before.
Everything will stay exactly the same. The only
Okay.
difference is that instead of having individual objects, you will now create an array of objects. The rest of the logic will stay the same. So you're only modifying what I'm asking. The rest will stay the same.
Okay.
So did everybody had a chance of completing this code and running it?
Yep.
Okay, so I see, okay. So those of you who are done and have looked at the homework problem and don't have any more questions, you're free to go. And the rest of you, I think, are still coding, I think.
Have a good night.
Have a good
Good night.
night.
Have a good night.
Mhm.
So I'm having a bit of a problem. My public class games, the games is underlined and it says, what does it say here? The
So, sorry, I didn't hear you. You got cut out there.
nested type games cannot hide an enclosing type.
I cannot answer that question until I see your code. Let's have a look at it. Why do you have your public class game over there? Can you scroll up? Can you scroll up? No, scroll up to the top of your, why do you have that for loop and all of that stuff? What's that at the top?
The for loop. Oh, I see. Because that's
Yeah, I
the-
mean, why do you have line number 2 repeated on line number 16? Get rid of line 16 and 17.
I must have messed up when I was copying the notes down because
Okay.
my internet keeps. Yeah.
Yeah, you can delete line 16, 17. I hope you don't have 2 versions of main either. So once you get done with line 16 and 17, delete that and then scroll down to see that you don't have 2 mains. Francisco, Jack, and Jonathan, how about you guys? Huh. Okay, you're all caught up, Jack. Okay. Francisco, and you also all caught up. Okay. Okay. Jonathan, okay, Jonathan, you're still coding too? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, mine's at the display the games and the yeah, I can show you my screen. if you-
Sure. It's giving you an error, you're saying, on line number 57 and then line number 76. Okay. Oh, on line number 76, you wrote %10. After the %10, you should write S and then put a /n for new line. Right after
Okay,
S. Right after the S, put a \n. Yep, like that. Save the changes and rerun. There you go.
okay, there we go. And then I just have the others, the list games to program.
Oh, the search part you're saying?
Yeah. So let me stop sharing.
I will give you guys the search code in the chat because it's going to take us a long time for you to be able to copy that code.
Yeah, makes sense.
So you should have the search part in the chat, which is the search method, this one. So you'll code that after the display method. And then you have two calls from the main to be made.